become addicted to it, becomes in that sense the substitute for entering into and becoming congruent inside with what's real in my life, namely I feel guilty or whatever it is, you see. So some people take coffee, some people turn the TV on, other people go to work, other people, pick up a book and read it, other people fall asleep. Some people get headaches and then they take an aspirin or something, or whatever it is. We all have our way of process skipping when those places inside that are annoying or downright terrifying surface up. And that's why this is so important. Because when you can understand this and identify it in yourself, understand it psychologically, and see how common it is, then what you have to stand back and look at is now, in terms of your growth practices, as well as, say, your ordinary lifestyle, but your growth practices and the religious practices, are these helping me, the way I pray, the way I worship, the way I do this or that or whatever it is in religion, helping me to own and enter into the truth of myself and become more holy, more whole? Or is in fact the way I practice my religion process skipping? That is really important, because a lot of us do not only things for other people as nurses or doctors or ministers or priests or parents or something. We do good things, but we do them for the wrong inside reasons. And we don't know that. That it is not helping us, and in the long run isn't helping those other people. For us to be doing these things as a way of literally escaping from ourselves. So is the way you practice your religion, is the way you go to a lot of these different things that are being done around here, is that a process skipping mechanism now that it being holy water is sprinkled over it, or New Age stuff is given to it or whatever? Or is it something that helps me own the truth of myself in my daily life, and consequently clearing me inside of those blocked places so that I can live with that truth and be connected? Yeah. So this is really, really important for those of us who are trying to grow, and we do some of this and some of this and some of this and so forth, and have no really way of knowing what we're doing, whether it's on target or off target.
Right. Okay, so from what Ed just said, I sense that you can see that when I would process skip in the visit to my mother, can you see how I could very easily become addicted to visiting my mother? See, you become addicted to whatever it is takes you away from or numbs the pain. You will become addicted to it. And insofar as that process skipping, addictive pattern takes you away from the doorway into yourself, it takes you away from the process that is the unfolding of your unique spirit. So in a sense, psychologically, we can say that this process skipping mechanism is the pathology. It's a pathology that affects spirit. It affects the unfolding of your life, the uniqueness of who you are. With the process skipping structure, what makes it so difficult to change and why it is so powerful is because it's on automatic pilot. In other words, as soon as you come up and get close to the feeling that you don't like, You're off to the bottle, you're off to the TV, to work, to drugs, to meditation, if meditation is your preferred way to process skip, to church. And that doesn't mean church is bad, it's just some people abuse church as a way to process skip, or to helping other people, to volunteer work. Volunteer work is fine, and I'm not saying anything negative about it. Just where is the person who's volunteering inside, and out of what in themselves are they doing their volunteering?
So this in terms of communities and community systems and political and economic and so forth systems are that I think that it's precisely being able or enabling, if these systems can enable people in that sense of support them in their process skipping, then they can continue to manipulate those people.
You get
Catch
that?
it?
In other words,
See,
if the...
that's
if the,
why, in other words, if men can continue to support women in process skipping, they can control them. If religious leaders are allowed to and continue to substitute all kinds of things for a process of congruence, and they are the type that wants to or needs to manipulate people to feel good, that type of dominance will continue in unhealthy religion, in unhealthy politics and unhealthy economics and so forth. But when people are helped to move into wholeness in themselves and to own their own spirit, you can't dominate in that destructive way. They won't put up with it. Yeah. So it has implications at every level of society. What holds these systems of dominance that we rebel against, that we protest against, that we march in the streets against, and so forth, is precisely that we do not either understand or we allow ourselves to be separated from this process of congruence and the strength and the freedom that comes from owning and our own spirit inside. And that's why the Gospels, all the way through, go back to the Scriptures of our own, of the Christian tradition, and it's in others too. And it's that truth, what truth? The truth of who I really am that sets us free. We allow these systems to continue to dominate us because we don't know how to find that spirit inside. When we find it and when we say, the emperor has no clothes on and that's the way it is, folks, I'm not buying into this system, it will change. And until then it won't. Till you have whole people in churches, whole people in our democracy, we will continue to be dominated by the interests that are destroying our country right now. And it's very, very clear. When I was at college in the late 40s here, went to the University of Santa Clara, just down the valley. My professors in the political science department were telling me, that's what, 45 years or more ago, that our system isn't working. It's broken. What Bill Bradley said a month ago when he said he wasn't going to be in the Senate any longer. That it's broken. Why? Because of this whole thing here. It's a much deeper thing than just saying the representative form of government isn't working anymore because of the Electoral College and this and that. That's true. You can make superficial changes. But the basic thing that's missing is people are not empowered any longer by religion, by education, and by our form of government. Empowered in what sense? Empowered to find and live in their own spirit, where they will stand up and say, we are not going to have our system dominated and determined for us of representative government by moneyed interests and so forth like that. And the crass selfishness that simply overwhelms this system of government that we now have. Well, we didn't know that then, but we do know it now. We can understand, but where does it always have to start? With each one of us, doesn't it? We have to take responsibility for being whole and living out of our own spirit, or it can't change. We can't go blaming other people. Right. We first ourselves have to take that step inside and then guide others into that step. And then it can change. Václav Havel gave 2 speeches this last graduation in this country, one at Stanford and one at MIT. And in both of them, this is what he was saying. And he was saying, until you restore your sense and connection to the transcendent, he said, you have no basis for the kind of responsible citizenship that makes a democracy work. And if you want to take what we're doing, you see, that's exactly what this process brings us into. What we're calling the sense, what I said yesterday and called the sense of being in Christ. Being in a larger body. Being in some transcendent, connected to some transcendent reality that gives me the wisdom and gives me the energy to have a certain moral sense of responsibility to other people and to the world around me. That inner sense that when I kill or destroy or do something to this world around me and other people, I essentially am destroying myself. And then it makes no sense to be violent. It makes no sense to destroy other people in order to try to stand on them to be somebody. See, the morals, the process of finding morals is an onward growth movement that is right in this process. So this, what we're talking about here, has profound political, economic, social implications that are beyond any just focusing process as if it just was another self-help gimmick of New Age or something.
You know, 20 years ago, Ed and I made a deliberate choice in the work that we were going to do that was to become our life's work. And the choice was we wanted to help change systems of dominance, and we realized that the way to do that is not to confront them. It's not for us. That's a choice that we made. Other people made different choices, but the choice that we made was not to lead demonstrations in the street, to write treatises showing the logical inconsistencies in the systems and everything else. We just came to this very simple conclusion. If you want to change a system of dominance, then you keep feeding congruent people into that system. Just keep feeding congruent people into that system. What I would like to do is to go a little further with what Ed opened, and that is to look at the area of religion just a little bit. And I'd like to show you some examples of process skipping within a religious setting. And we can look at one or two of these, and then we can look at how that same prayer form or whatever could be done in a way that would be healthy. You follow me? So we'll just take some time to look at some simple examples. Here's a little example from one of the care notes called Healing the Pain of Your Past. And the author writes, so instead of owning and moving into, this is what the suggestion is. Move the pain to a place outside your heart. Rail at your pain. Write it down, and then tear up or burn the written testimony. Or talk it out. Tell it to your cassette recorder, and then bury the tape. The more concretely and tangibly you move the pain outside yourself, the cleaner the wound will heal. So picture the people involved, remember your own responses to them and your emotions, remember your own errors of judgment, all the roads not taken, and then let it all go.
Quickly. Let me just put it this way. For example, look, if you were to take the whole question of praying to God when you feel lonely, let's say. So let's say your prayer pattern is that you feel lonely and you pray to God to take this away. So you talk to God and ask God in prayer to take this away. Do you see the potential of process keeping right in there? And see, and so we don't understand how that's just got right into the whole way we even pray. What would be a healthy way of praying? In your sense of the presence of God, or however you imagine the transcendent, with that awareness to ask for help to own your loneliness, to be in the loneliness. This is a very Old Testament and Psalm way of praying. If you notice the psalmist always named and owned their pain. See, they named and owned it. So you're doing the same sort of thing. To sit in your awareness of not being alone, if that's your sense of having that God is real or Jesus is real in your life or however, and in that presence you own and are truthful for what is real inside you and ask God to help you be in that, which is tough to do, isn't it? It always is tough. That's why we run away from it and we use prayer and everything else to escape. If you want to ask God to help you own and be truthful, and it's in that truthfulness you bring this pain or this loneliness into the presence of God. As long as you push it away, you push it outside of yourself. And there you are, sitting there in prayer, filled with the loneliness, owning the loneliness, and then something comes and touches that. See, and it can only come when you're in that way. Maybe you have to carry it for a while. That's okay. That's part of this whole thing too. Then something comes, a word or a memory or something touches that. And then you notice inside your body, oh, there's another, like it could be put, there's another way of looking at this thing. There's a whole dimension of this, I didn't realize that. Something comes that begins to change the way you carry it, and then you know it isn't something you sat down and did with your head. You have a body feel then of the transcendent, of a presence, of a very personal presence, and personalizing presence in you. It's making you more a person, helping you become more whole. That would be healthy prayer.
Right.
Big difference, you see. Huge difference. Yeah. You're growing humanly in wholeness, and your sense of God is growing with you. Healthy religion and human growth are coming together inside you as a person. If you want to find the best collection of process skipping stuff anywhere, literally a library of it, go to the pamphlet racks in the back of churches.
Yeah. You know, when I read something... That's where this came from. We just go in the back of churches and get all our examples that we need. Just take them off the racks. When I read something like this, it reminds me, remember those of you who bake cakes, and remember the time that your first cake fell and your wise mother or grandmother showed you how you fill the hole up with frosting. And then, you know, remember that? You know, and I remember the story in Ernest Thompson Seton, Wild Animals I Have Known, and it's a story about Lobo the wolf, and this wolf has a little cub, and one day this little cub gets caught in a trap, and there's a chain running from the trap to a tree, and the mother wolf hears the the little one crying. And she goes and she finds the cub, and she picks the cub up by the nape of the neck and tries to carry it back to the den. And then, of course, as soon as it gets to the end of the chain, the little cub is pulled out of her mouth. So the mother wolf just sits back and looks at the situation. And then what she does is she picks the cub up and she carries it all the way back to the tree. And then she digs a deep hole. And she takes the chain and pushes the chain into the hole. And she covers the chain up with dirt. And then she picks the cub up and tries to take the cub home. And in so many of these, and I'm not going to impugn motive, I'm sure they're well-intentioned, but in so many of these kinds of suggestions as to how to deal with your pain, they have the same sad, almost tragic feel to them. They're not dealing with the issue. The issue is, and the direction toward wholeness is right at the heart of the very feeling inside yourself that you fear and avoid the most. The potential for the gift of, call it grace, the doorway to greater wholeness, it's right at the heart of the very feeling that you're spending so much of your life running away from and avoiding and numbing and everything else. And that lesson is so difficult to learn, but can you see how it's the Paschal mystery. When I can embrace the cross, I mean, all these old words, you put them in a process context, they make a lot of sense. If I can hold my pain, if I can walk through the darkness of what I have feared so much in my life, I am blessed with resurrection. I come to something in myself that I could never in a million years have controlled my way through to with my mind.
This is a sister who's in charge of low-cost housing for seniors in Denver, and she lives in one of these high-rise, low-cost housing developments there, and works with senior citizens a lot in her building. And she said, recently I was with a group of senior citizens reflecting on the scripture readings for the day. One of the ladies has been quite ill for several years, and like so many older folks, has not been able to do the things she used to do. This woman was a PhD in English literature and has taught at the university level for many, many years. During the discussion, she shared how very empty she felt inside. She said she used to feel so fulfilled when she was able to work with her students and help them. Almost immediately, one of the other ladies in the group said to her, "Marilyn, you shouldn't feel that way. Just think of all the good that you have done over the years as a teacher." Marilyn's face fell, and she grew quiet. When we left the prayer group, I asked Marilyn if I could walk with her to her apartment, and then asked if she wanted to talk a little bit about that empty feeling she had inside. She invited me into her apartment and asked me to sit down, and she began to talk about the feelings inside, and her hand automatically went up to her heart. I listened to her and invited her to hold those feelings in the same way she holds her cat on her lap when the cat needs her loving attention. She became very quiet for a few moments, and I just sat there with her in silence. It wasn't long before she looked up at me, and a warm smile came across her aging face. Her eyes lit up as if she was surprised, and she said, "I feel better now. Thank you for coming in." I used to say to people, "You shouldn't feel that way," thinking that it was a comfort to them, until I learned about focusing. Rather than discount ours or others' feelings, we have to sit down with them in a caring way and allow them to tell their own story. What a gift. All right, one other example this morning that I'd like to share with you connected with our process skipping. It's a good illustration of this because this is so insidious and we don't really catch it most of the time unless we're really living, focusing, and then something feels wrong and we finally notice what it is. And this is something I ran into in a news thing, that parade that comes in the Sunday paper. And it was an article about a year or so ago, and it was called Last Chance High School. And the author of that, he describes what happens when a dedicated teacher meets down-and-out kids in a program that is the system's last resort. It is part of the special ed department drawing from 14 different schools in Queens, New York. And this is a black teacher, she's 36, and he describes her and her dedication to these kids, most of whom are black or Puerto Rican, and her commitment to them, her energy, and her ability to communicate and care with for these children. And then the author who has gone into the classroom describes an experience which he saw there. And he says that one day when he was in the classroom watching her, there